The college baseball experience on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball Mania is live with $15 million in prizes. Sign up today using TCE SGPN as a promo code to claim your special pick'em first time, plus your first time deposit up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE SGPN. And it is showtime once again back here on the college baseball experience. My name is Noah Bieniek, aka 77. Joining me today discussing college baseball bracketology. He's jumping into a new sport. A special guest first off, because he's a college basketball bracketologist. We were able to meet up in Las Vegas for the first round of March Madness. Spent both Thursday and Friday with this guy. It was an amazing time. Welcome to the show, Rocco Miller. You're on the college baseball experience. How's it going?
This is awesome, Noah. I'm doing great. Been really looking forward to this. I've, if you've followed carefully over the years, I don't know if anybody has. I do put up one or two of these projections. I always do the Selection Monday in baseball, Memorial Day. It's a fun morning out here in the West Coast. I think the show starts at 9 a.m. every year in our time zone. And I usually do one or two ahead of that. So it's around that time. I just love how the baseball selection process is so much different from the basketball. I almost have to unwind everything I do leading up to March Madness to prepare for this. And of course, you're still going to get those very questionable decisions, whether it's last four in or who gets those last couple host spots, how you cut off the top eight. And I just think there's so much more to learn about this. And so thank you for having me on. I'm going to have a great time today.
Yeah, no problem. I know you are much bigger in the college basketball realm, but I respect you taking time out of your day and discussing college baseball. This guy's phone's blowing up 24/7, covering that sport 365. But yeah, we were hanging out in the Westgate Theater, and I swear I walked by you and I was like, holy shit, I think that's Rocco, because I had told you in person, like, I'm a bracket nut. And you were one of my favorite follows, not only because you're covering just the bracketology side of college baseball or college basketball 24/7 throughout the college basketball season, but you're like on the road flying all over the country. It's actually nice to see you like in a centralized location at your home, like probably desk, I'm assuming, because when you're on the field of 68, you are like at a hotel like half the time, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm pretty aggressive with the college hoop schedule, just trying to I think it's important to see as many teams live as possible. I know in college baseball process as well, it's actually a little bit more kind of how basketball was 10, 20 years ago. Not only the RPI element, but you have the regional advisory committees. And I think there's still a degree of that in basketball, but it's much less formal. And what I do in basketball is I study the exact procedures and policies. I interview committee members. And I also think, since basketball is so heavily watched, and March Madness is probably the biggest event in all of college sports, one singular event. They really know they've got to do their homework and see some teams. So I try to do the same thing, and it's a blast to do that. I wish I had the time to do it in baseball, but I really try to block my whole weekend every year for college baseball regionals. I think it's phenomenal to sit back and watch the bases loaded coverage where they just whip you around from one region to the next. And I'm just like in basketball, I'm always kind of pulling for the underdogs, want to see some surprise regional winners. And same thing with this bracket process. If you have like a fifth Sun Belt team or a fourth Sun Belt team, like I would love to see those teams get in over a 10th SEC or things like that. So I've noticed here over the last few years, there's a lot of similarities with the things I'm kind of pulling for and sticking up for the little guy.
Yeah, 100%. And going off of that real quick, while I'm still filling in, I totally forgot to do the RPI for the auto bids, which will be the first thing that we start off with. But to give me a little bit more time, you were mentioning how you kind of have a little bit of rooting interest for the little guy, but also you do represent the University of Washington first off, but also the Pac-12. Are you rooting a little bit extra hard for the Pac-12 teams this year?
I mean, Washington's had a rough year, and so I mean, I think they'll be lucky just to get into the Pac-12 tournament. I think they only, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they only get the top 8 in.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance they're not even going to go to that, and I think it's in Scottsdale. So for the rest of the league, it's Oregon State's always awesome. So of course they're going to be in our host discussion tonight. Arizona's on fire.
They are,
and they've got a big final series in Tucson against the Beavers, and that will determine the league champion, which is super fascinating because if Arizona wins 2 out of 3 or sweeps it, I think they're going to be in the host discussion. They've jumped all the way up to 26 this morning in the RPI after that late night win over Utah last night. And then Utah themselves, they're a fascinating case because if you look at what they've done in the league, historically, this is 16-11, even though they lost that series against Arizona. That should be the kind of credentials that would get a Pac-12 team in pretty easily, but they're all the way down at 71 in the RPI. So I think they are in that bubble discussion. They could be the lowest RPI team to get in, but there's now a reason to leave the Utes out. So that puts the league at risk. I think Oregon's a safe bet. I know they've been ranked most of the year. The RPI is not great, but they've got some big-time series wins, and they're also 16-11 and safely up there at 46 in the RPI. So I think those are the 4. Cal's scraping, I think, for a bubble spot. They had a sweep over the Beavers in Berkeley, and that really gave them a hope and an opportunity. But, dropping silly games like yesterday to San Jose, really, really killing them down at 68 now. And again, just 14-13 in the league. So you look at Cal going into this weekend, I see that they are they're going to play Washington at home. They're playing Stanford right now in a non-conference midweek game. I think they probably need to go 4-0 and then probably get a win or 2 down in Scottsdale. So Cal has a chance, but the remaining schedule won't help them a whole lot.
So yeah, you being the active bracketology expert, you helped me out a ton. You said you've already kind of filled this thing out before we're doing a joint operation here. So real quick, I know just off the top of my head, as I'm still filling out the auto bids, right now Tennessee's ranked number 1. But when it comes to bracketology, we all know that the rankings don't really matter when you're dissecting resumes. Tennessee currently in RPI, they're 6th. RPI, like if you're new to college baseball bracketology, it's not quite like college basketball. RPI is heavily weighted in the committee's decision. This year, they actually just added KPI as another sorting tool for teams. But currently, Kentucky, number 1 in RPI, also up there in KPI. Where'd you go with the number 1 overall seed here?
Well, I think it goes to Kentucky just based on the fact they're 20-7 in the SEC. There's not a lot of schedule remaining. They've won 18 games in quad 1 alone, which is by far the most in the country. You look at Tennessee for comparison at 13 wins. You look at a really strong Texas A&M and Arkansas. Both are very strong programs. They only have 12 each. So I just think Kentucky is just one of those classic cases where the proof is already in the pudding. And, barring them getting swept here in the end and then going out early in Hoover, they're in really good shape to get that number 1 spot from what I can tell. And based on all the, notes I've been taking throughout the process, make sure I'm getting this right. But I really feel good about them based on that criteria. What about you, Noah?
I do too. I respect that Kentucky has the resume and metrics to get them to that number 1 spot. My opinion, just watching the ball games this season, I think they do everything well. I don't think they're really elite in any facet of the game, but that, in my opinion, when you're taking care of series in the SEC and you're currently leading the SEC, usually in years past, that's gotten you the number 1 overall seed. So I don't have any arguments with that at all. So Kentucky, we currently have seeded number 1 overall. And that's given me enough time to kind of fill out 90% of the RPI for the auto bids. So let's run through these real quick. Auto bid wise, in the ACC, North Carolina, if they don't already have the regular season locked up, they're ahead of Clemson by 3 games in the ACC. So North Carolina auto bid from the ACC there. Bryant in the America East, they've got that regular season locked up. But again, with all these mid-major tournaments, that is what gives them the auto bid. So right now we are just filling in some of these teams that are at the top of the standings. East Carolina, they lead the American by 1 game over UTSA. East Carolina finishes at home against Rice, which is a pretty favorable series to UTSA, where they go to Florida Atlantic. St. Louis just won a huge series in the A-10 this weekend. They hosted Dayton. Dayton actually beat them by like 9 or 10 game 1 of the series on Friday, and St. Louis comes back Saturday and Sunday to win that. Austin Peay leads a loaded A-Sun this year. Absolutely loaded. My favorite conference tournament to watch each year too, based on the format that they do. Top 4 teams in the conference tournament in the A-Sun, they get put into one 4-team pool, kind of like a regional or a 4-team pool in Omaha for the College World Series. The team that has the worst record by either tiebreaker or goes 0-3 in that 4-team pool, they get bounced. But by nature of all 4 of those teams playing at the top of their standings one extra time, it kind of helps out the RPI, and they don't have to focus on throwing some of their best pitchers in those games. So it's really a really fun, interesting tournament format. Austin Peay currently your number 1 seed. That's why we're highlighted here, though, because they are only up by a game, and that is still fluid. Oklahoma has locked up the Big 12. They ran away with that conference this year. Very impressive. UConn currently leads St. John's by a game in the Big East. High Point in the Big South is tied with Presbyterian, but they swept the Blue Hose earlier this season, so they have the auto bid currently. Illinois, the Big Ten race is super fun, but compared to competition around the country, might not be the best, but I mean, it's super fun conference race we've got going on right now. Illinois leads by a game. Each of the top 5 teams are all within 2 games of each other. Illinois hosts Purdue. Actually, no, they're at Purdue this weekend. And Indiana hosts Michigan. Nebraska is at Michigan State. Those are your top 5 teams in that race. UC Santa Barbara currently leads the Big West by, I think, 2 games currently. UNC Wilmington in the CAA leads College of Charleston by a game. Charleston just had a dogfight of a series against Northeastern, so UNCW takes the top spot this weekend. Their Louisiana Tech, they are tied with Dallas Baptist in the Conference USA, but their series win over DBU gets them the auto bid there. Wright State, they are on top of the horizon by 2 games right now over Northern Kentucky, 3 games on top of Oakland. Ivy League, Columbia locked that up like 3 weekends ago. Fairfield come out of the MAAC. Bowling Green locked up the MAC like 3 weekends ago as well. Indiana State's 4 games up of Evansville in the Missouri Valley. Fresno State, they're tied with New Mexico in the Mountain West, but they have the series win over the Lobos. Sacred Heart comes out of the NEC. Little Rock out of the Ohio Valley. Arizona out of the Pac-12. Currently, they're a game up on Oregon State, but Oregon State has to sweep that weekend series this weekend in Tucson to take this auto bid or just the regular season conference champion away from Arizona, because Oregon State had a game canceled against USC earlier this season. Army was in an interesting battle today. They had to win 2 games against Bucknell, and they did. Otherwise, if they did not, they would have been eliminated from the conference tournament, and their season would have been done. I think they've gone to the NCAA tournament 6 years in a row. It might be even more, might be just slightly less, but they have ran the Patriot League as of recent. Like we said, Kentucky out of the SEC currently. UNC Greensboro leads the SoCon after beating Sanford in a weekend series this weekend. In the Southland, Lamar is on top of the standings there. Florida A&M leads the SWAC by 3 games. North Dakota State, that one's going to be a fun little shindig in that conference tournament. 5 teams to take, to be awarded the 64th ranked team in the field, probably. The Sun Belt, Louisiana has that thing locked up. West Coast Conference, San Diego, very impressive campaign from the Toreros. And Grand Canyon has the auto bid currently in the WAC. So those are our auto bids so far. We'll go through specifically their RPI and some of their resume metrics when we have to divvy up some of them in between the 3 seed line and 4 seed line, where we're sending all of these teams in the regionals later on in this portion of the show. So Rocco, going back into actually, do you have any other input on some of the auto bid process that we have kind of zoomed through here?
My first input would be that was a beautiful summary based on the fact that you were able to regurgitate every league's standings with, for me, I'm clicking back and
I'm not
forth.
looking at any notes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You got it down by heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's an amazing feat. And by my rough math, and I can explain this a little bit, out of all those leagues, I count 8 where there could be true, no debate about it, bid stealers. And that would be the American, since East Carolina is the only shoe-in. Any other team that wins that tournament, that's a bid steal. The Big East, obviously St. John's and Xavier are scrapping on the fringe of the bubble. We'll get into that later with UConn leading the league. I think the Big East is debatable because they might end up getting 2 no matter how you slice it. But there is a chance there that if like a Creighton wins it or a Georgetown wins it, you could have a third team. The CAA, a couple teams there probably are going to get in. Maybe if a surprise winner like a Campbell or William & Mary or somebody off the grid there steals a bid, that could be a third. Conference USA, you have 2 virtual locks with Louisiana Tech and Dallas Baptist. So anybody else there, like a WKU or a Liberty, and you've got yourself another bid steal, the Missouri Valley, similar to the American. It's Indiana State or bust. So anybody else that wins it, that's a second bid to the Valley. Pac-12, debatable because Cal's kind of a bubble team. Utah could fall off. So they might be stuck with 4 bids, but there is a chance where Pac-12 could have a bid steal. Sun Belt, certainly if a 5th team gets in, that could be a steal. And then the West Coast, a real true bid steal conference with San Diego clearly the only team that's going to get an at-large.
Awesome stuff. Before we jump into seeding into the top 8, I'll give my Wi-Fi a second to get back to full 3 or 4 bars here. Looking for more ways to get paid watching hoops? Check out the WNBA Gambling Podcast, which is coming back this week. Plus, did you know you can get every single podcast release by SGPN all in one place? Just smash the SGPN network feed wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can bet the second jewel of the Triple Crown with Nirra Bets. Sign up today for a $200 deposit bonus with promo code SGPN200. Join now to claim your $200 deposit bonus just in time for the Preakness at nyrabets.com/SGPN200. Get ready for nonstop action with Nirra Bets. Evening promotions. Bet $50 each on the Belmont at the Big A and any track with a first post at 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday for a $10 bonus, win or lose. You need more? Earn a $15 deposit bonus, win or lose, when you bet at least $75 on each the Belmont at the Big A and Monmouth Park. Visit nyrabets.com to opt in. And that's not all. You can score big with a 20% deposit bonus on your ticket winnings by hitting an exacta on any or all races at Belmont at the Big A on Sunday. Feed your competitive edge with live money handicapping contests nearly every week. Enter the Friday feeder contest to earn your entry into the next $300 contest. Plus, win cash prizes and seats into next week's contest with Nirra Bets Saturday contests. Registration closes before the Belmont at Big A third race post time on the day of each contest. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. The NBA playoffs are here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting for you guys. It's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em games is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Making entries of all basketball or mix and match across your favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog is available in 30-plus states, including California, Texas, and even Canada. Personally, I was writing nightly articles during the college basketball season, hitting at 62%. Last year, they brought out college baseball player projections in the month of June, so I can't wait for those to come back as well. Like I said, Underdog is available in 30-plus states, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched their Champions, which is their player versus player format in Florida, and they're also now legal for drafting in the state of Michigan. Sign up today with their promo code TCE SGPN to claim your special pick, plus first-time deposit up $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE SGPN. All right, let's jump in and have some fun with the top 8 seeds here. To me, the team that kind of jumps out the most, RPI wise, quality metrics wise, I I think I like Arkansas. Like they've been pretty steady the entire season. They're 12-8 in Q1. They're 500 on the road with a 46th ranked non-conference strength of schedule. You look at other teams around them in this area. Georgia currently ranked third in the RPI at 118. Texas A&M second in RPI, 124. Tennessee, 168th non-conference strength of schedule, ranked sixth. Rocco, where'd you go with the next team after Kentucky in the top 8?
Yeah, it's pretty tough right this minute. And I know you and I discussed earlier, we'll go off of if the season ended now as our premise. But I think in some of these situations, looking ahead can be helpful to break any
Yeah, it's
ties.
Arkansas at Texas A&M. Good point.
Right. So the winner of that series is likely at this time next week when the dust settles from this coming weekend. It's almost guaranteed probably going to be in this 2-hole. I think this Texas A&M's consistency so far in terms of not losing any games outside of Q1. They're 12-10 in those games. So not clearly as far above 500 as Arkansas, but the fact that they haven't lost to anybody else outside of that range is pretty amazing. It looks like they're a perfect 30-0 in all of those games. That could be a quasi not bad loss or bad loss, I should say. With Arkansas, they're similar, 12-8, but 2 losses in quad 2. Obviously, we have the head-to-head coming soon. Arkansas has the 2-game edge in the SEC standings, 19-8 versus A&M 17-10. It is really, really close. And I also would put Tennessee in that mix just from the standpoint of they're also 19-8 in the SEC. They're basically perfect in non-conference with that one dust-up a couple weeks ago against Lipscomb. But besides that, 13-9, even more Q1 wins than the other 2. So it's really tough to separate these 3, in my opinion. And then I think with as good as the ACC is, North Carolina being the clear leader, the clear representative here as the champion at 20-7, I have a hard time seeing the committee like putting them any lower than 4. So I'm juggling these 4 to try to find the right mix. I'm comfortable with putting 3 SEC teams, including Kentucky, as the top 3 seeds. And then I think Carolina, for whatever reason, goes in the 4-hole. And then somebody out of this SEC dominant mix is going to fall to 5.
Yeah,
but I'm kind of okay with that mix. Yeah.
I agree with you. So far, while you were talking, I typed in A&M at 2, Arkansas at 3, UNC at 4. I agree with you. And Tennessee at 5. Actually, you know what? I feel a little bit so Arkansas, if we're projecting a little bit, most of the projection today would be if the season does end today. But like you said, looking forward is not going to be it's not going to hurt us. Tennessee doesn't play either Texas A&M or Arkansas until the SEC conference tournament. Do you like if Arkansas loses 2-3 at Texas A&M? Tennessee's they're going to be favored here. Tennessee faces they're at home against South Carolina. They're going to be favored to win that series. Do you like the Arkansas slipping to 5?
That's
SEC
actually
because
you read my mind. Yeah, so that's what I had here this morning was Arkansas at 5, Tennessee at 3, A&M at 2. But again, if A&M wins 2 out of 3 and Tennessee sweeps, then Tennessee has an argument to be up to 2 at just getting an extra game above A&M. They're already 2 above them now, at least from a conference standpoint. But I also kind of look at it as, and I think this is what the purpose of the regional advisory committee is. It's like which team would you be more scared to go play if you're I don't know if you're Austin P or Little Rock or somebody. And I don't know. I think that's debatable. Arkansas has obviously got the pitching, and Tennessee's just got electric bats in that ballpark. So might have a better chance to win a regional in Arkansas. I don't know how much in the weeds they get about that stuff, but I think they should. And that kind of helped break the tie for me a little bit as well.
Gotcha. And I think we kind of zoomed past it a little bit, but I mean, we've got a lot of SEC listeners that are going to be thinking North Carolina. We've been mentioning quad 1 records. They're currently 6-7.
I know,
but everywhere else around this resume, 35th in non-conference strength of schedule. They've scheduled well in the midweeks and in the early in the season in the non-conference weekend series. They're 7-7 on the road, so they've been about par where the other SEC programs have been on the road, and they don't have a bad loss in Q4, just the one Q3 loss. Anything that you want to add in defense of North Carolina at 4?
Well, yeah, and part of it might be a unnecessary, assumption that the committee wouldn't put the first 4 teams off the board all to one conference. However, if the NCAA softball selection show yesterday
Oh
is
my
any
God.
is any clue here, then maybe they will just do it that way. They'll just jam these 4 at the top, and Carolina will be stuck at the 5 spot.
Yeah. If anybody
So
doesn't know what Rocco just mentioned there, what he just brought up, the SEC got all 13 of their programs into the NCAA tournament.
right.
And how many hosts did you get? Did you pay attention to that or no?
I didn't count, but I know that middling teams like Missouri got the 7 seed, and
Yeah,
Duke was clearly the best team in the ACC. They got put all the way down to
that
10.
was crazy.
They're not
Yeah.
even in the top 8. So yeah, I think Florida State's a really strong team. They were 15. They barely got into a host spot. So yeah, I mean, obviously these committees are totally different.
Yep.
I think when it's all said and done, the ACC will get nearly as many teams as the SEC. There's a long history here of past committees rewarding the 2 leagues fairly equally, with the SEC, of course, having a little bit upper hand, but not by a big margin.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
found it.
banking on a lot of that. Yep.
I found it very interesting too that like one of the reasonings why they did not put Duke into the top 8 was because they didn't have a top 10 victory. Like I find that like just crazy nonsense, because you win a
Right.
power league like the ACC. I mean, yes, the league might be down, but like at the same time, we've had down years in the Pac-12 a couple of times, and we've still in college baseball seen Stanford and Oregon State consistently in the top 8 national seed wise. And I thought you just had to, reward Duke for like a top 5 RPI, top 5 KPI. That was just kind of crazy in my opinion. My gut reaction was like, how did this even happen?
Right. Well, and that's why I think things might be like in baseball. I have some, I'm very curious about where it's going, because even last year, I think what they tried to do in the past, the reason for the West getting a top 8 spot and so forth, was to help bring some national balance to the full tournament. But with the way the World Series shook out last year, as basically 6 SEC teams, right? I think maybe they're starting to get more comfortable with the SEC and ACC jam in Omaha, and maybe less. That's a less of a factor, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know what you mean there for sure, because it was 2022 that you're referencing where Oklahoma and Texas were both in
Yeah,
in Omaha, and there was 4 SEC teams. So yeah, like
right, exactly.
when those two join the SEC, I mean, you might be a little bit looser, and they could just be getting us warmed up to the idea of that for sure. All right, so
Yep.
the next kind of group here, RPI wise, Georgia, Clemson, and then a group of ACC teams also. So that group of ACC teams, is Clemson, Florida State, Wake Forest, with Georgia rounding up the top 9 in RPI. Let's do the next 2 here. Kind of how did you separate 6 and 7, and then we'll bring in 8, 9, 10 here, right on the bubble of a national seed.
Yeah, I think the next 2 would be Clemson or Georgia. Clemson's been up there pretty high the last few weeks, but just getting swept by Wake hurts, and Georgia's certainly the flavor of the week with their, I think it's an 8-game winning streak, right? So
Yeah,
they've skyrocketed. They've always had a strong RPI. They were under 500 for a lot of the conference season. Now all of a sudden they wake up 16 and 11. They're
yeah.
12 and 10 in quad 1. They still have 2 shaky losses way down in quad 4 that they have to own. I'm okay either way. I had Clemson at 6, but seeing the refresh data here today, I could certainly be convinced that Georgia belongs there.
Georgia also has a head-to-head over
4-3. Yep.
Clemson. So let's fill in Georgia over Clemson 6-7 there. And now we're getting into the interesting conversation at 8, where Indiana State, I think, comes into play, but it's a quad 1 losing record of 3-6. They do have a quad 1 loss, but their 18th ranked non-conference strength of schedule is really impressive. in a northern state like Indiana, where you can't always just schedule a bunch of the Carolina teams or a bunch of the teams down south with good RPIs. So I think Indiana State could be that mid-major that gets rewarded with a high seed this season, but also Wake Forest, Florida State, I think are also in consideration. East Carolina, after getting swept against Tulane, I would have had in this conversation too, but I think they're just, like you said, probably not the flavor of the week.
Yeah, that was brutal for the Pirates because they've been a pretty easy choice here, at least at 8. I had them at 7, I think last week at 7, and they've been as high as 6 in other weeks. Yeah, I think here I'm sticking with Florida State to stay in the top 8. They're still in the top 8 of the RPI. Sometimes when decisions like this get hard, I've noticed the committee just kind of goes chalk with the RPI ranking. Not only that, but Florida State's a clean 15-11 in the ACC to back that RPI up. They do have the sub quad 1 record now at 6-7. A couple shaky losses here and there, but I still think it's a tad more impressive than Wake, of course, is surging right behind them, 9th in the RPI, 15-12. Many more quad 1 wins, but still under 500. It's close between those two. We saw a good series when they played each other, so that's almost a wash. Didn't really break the tie for me. Indiana State, I like the story, but they did slip up once this weekend. That knocked them down to 10. I just don't think they're quite there. The team I did look at really closely for this 8 spot, Noah, was Oklahoma, in fact, just because they're 21-6 in the Big 12. And, I mean, that's a power league. They're dominating a power league.
Yeah.
I could certainly see them going all the way to 8 here.
I love what Oklahoma has done this season. I respect that 12-4 road record as well. I was just a little concerned on how you would view. So recently we've done some weekend recap shows, and I think Oklahoma right now, the way they're playing, they're coming off of back-to-back weekend sweeps. I have them as like just mostly eye test and a top 8 team right now. I have them ranked 8th, and I've had them in that spot the last 2 weeks. So I don't think you're crazy at all for giving Oklahoma a serious look here. But I think that the 6 Q3, Q4 losses kind of weighs them down a little bit, right?
Yep. They played poorly in the midweek. I know they lost to Oral Roberts recently, and then a few others in that area.
Yeah. So are we going Florida State here at 8 to round up the top 8?
Yeah, Florida State's my vote, but again, I think Wake and Oklahoma are close in my opinion.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I agree with you with the Seminoles there. Once again, on the college baseball experience, I'm joined by Rocco Miller, a college basketball bracketologist and analyst. He's a master of scheduling. You can see him. He covers the sport 365, tweeting out, hey, these two teams have now just scheduled a home and home for the next 2 years type thing. So he does an amazing job covering bracketology in the college basketball side of things, but really enjoys the math and the philosophy behind college baseball bracketology as well. He's joining me on the college baseball experience here as our top 8 that we've just devised is Kentucky at 1, following by Texas A&M, Tennessee, North Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia, Clemson, and Florida State rounding out the top 8. All those are national seeds where if they win their regional, they will then be hosting the super regional. Okay, so we mentioned a couple of teams that were in consideration for that 8th seed. Now let's try to weed them out. We had Wake Forest, Indiana State, and Oklahoma. Do you want to kind of steer me in the right direction, or do you want to have me walk in blindly while you have this thing figured out?
I don't think I have it figured out. I think you can debate a lot of things. You were early on Indiana State for me, but I also would love to see them go early so I can be swayed. I know my concerns on Indiana State are just the 3 and 6 overall quad 1. They don't get the opportunities, and they did have 9, and they only won 3 of them, and taking up to 3 bad losses, depending on how you look at bad losses. There's wiggle room to put some of these power teams still above them. And again, I'm doing this the same way I would in basketball, where I'm really just trying to project what I think the committee will ultimately decide and removing any bias or opinions. Otherwise, I'd love to see the Sycamores up high personally. But besides that, yeah, like I said, I think Oklahoma just being a a power conference, a dominant leader in league play alone. Those records that the interesting thing about baseball is your league record is built on weekend results, which is, basically how you're going to approach a regional, at least your first 3 games. 21-6. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I get that they have the bad midweek losses, but I'm kind of forgiving that because, it's a big achievement to win a power league and especially to dominate one, which they have. And then Wake Forest, just from a pure like power numbers standpoint, we saw what they did last year. They've been up and down throughout this year, but just coming off a sweep of Clemson, everything looks a lot more rosy and beautiful here today. 11 quad 1 wins, tons of chances, 23 chances. But I think to me, those are my next 2. But what about you?
Yeah, I like your Oklahoma throw out there. Like, I think that was a little early, like you were saying with Indiana State, a little early, but I think this team has really passed my eye test recently. So like, I love Oklahoma at 9. I kind of just filled it in while you were talking. Oklahoma 9, Wake Forest 10. Do you kind of agree with that?
That's actually exactly what I had. I do think Mississippi State probably belongs in either this mix or the next mix. They're once you get up to 3 games over 500 and top 16 RPI in the SEC, you're going to catch the committee's attention. Plus, they're all the way up there. They're at 12-11 in Q1, winning records across all the metrics. So Mississippi State is one where you could argue them above the 2 that we just mentioned as well. So I think they kind of belong in that group.
Avetta, a good friend of both of ours, she's in the chat saying Noah and Rocco on the Knolls in the top 8 spot. Pity us. We just had a tornado. That actually brings up a great talking topic here.
Right.
Their right field fence was completely knocked over, half leaning over, and it's a short porch in right field now, not really defended by that right field tall wall. We're talking about like teams having to earn regional bids from the NCAA. I didn't get eyes on any news social media wise. They were on the road at Pitt. I don't know how long it's going to take to fix an outfield wall that is probably 20 feet high. I don't know if that's going to be an issue host wise. So that's really interesting.
It is.
You normally get that. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there was an update earlier that they are working to get it ready for this weekend. They're supposed to host Georgia Tech, which is a important matchup for both of them. So if they can pull it off this weekend, they're fine to host. But if there's still problems, they have to move that to another location. That's going to be worrisome for the committee because just knowing the committee, if you remember the committee back when they did the COVID bracket, they had a bunch of contingencies. They had to announce 20 regional host finalists about 4 weeks in advance. Yeah. And then out of those, like Pitt was one of them, and they didn't even make the field because they finished so cold that year. But yeah, like for a planning process, I think if Florida State can't pull this off this weekend, they might start making plans to make whoever the number 2 is in Florida State's region the actual host. So
I remember that Pitt year pretty well. I went to school in downtown Pittsburgh that year. And we played them in the fall. So like they kicked their ass. Obviously we're an NAIA school, but like I was pretty impressed with some of their hitting really, but yeah, they completely fell off a cliff to finish that year. But yes, like that was a crazy process how they had to announce the bids. But one of those things that I was going to branch off of on that topic was Duke currently 22nd in RPI. In weeks past, they've kind of been in consideration, but they haven't been as strong recently in the ACC. They announced that they applied to host with their current home field, Jack Coombs. I think it's Jack Coombs Field. Which is only like a 3,000 person capacity park. So that's a big thing. They also care about the press boxes and stuff like that. It really comes into play with some of the bid majors where you kind of the questions, but other than that, I don't think we have too many issues with the field of top 16 that we're going to have so far this season, because we know Indiana State was given the host seed last year. After Wake Forest, who we had seeded 10th, we have 11, 12, 13, coming over from that previous conversation. We have we have Mississippi State, you mentioned, and
Indiana State.
Mississippi State, Indiana State, and who else kind of gets thrown into this conversation?
Yep.
But I like those two probably being next. I would probably say the Mississippi State, the number of quad one wins over Indiana State probably wins out, right? And then who comes in after those two teams?
Well, I also have East Carolina in this mix as well, despite the Tulane situation where they were swept. But I think East Carolina head to head against Indiana State starts to favor the Pirates in some ways. Obviously, in quad one they're better, and
True.
The rest. If you combine everything, it's pretty equal. And then, of course, Sycamores get the RPI nod. So you could go either way. I kind of go back to that earlier question. If you're a visiting team, which one would intimidate you more? I think ECU's the answer. So, and I don't know if that's how big that is, but I ended up giving ECU the 12 spot because of that. But I did have Indiana State right in there at 13.
I do not have an issue with that, and my co-host Colby Dant went to East Carolina, so I don't think I think he's applauding you for throwing them in higher than I did for sure. So Mississippi State, East Carolina. Do you have Indiana State at 13, or is there another high-powered team that you kind of threw in front of them?
I did, and then I've got another kind of mid-major darling, if you will, with Santa Barbara. Okay. In the next mix with looking at, and as I think this is where you get to these last three spots, you got to kind of throw in more teams to just make sure you get it right. So I think the teams to look at are also Virginia, who State. And Oregon State. They're both top 14. And then you've got, I think Arizona's getting closer, but they're not quite there. Just the RPI is a little too high, but they are 19-8 in the league. And any kind of series win against Oregon State makes them the clear winner of the league, and at least 21 wins. So
a good weekend against Oregon State would help too, because they're just 2-7 in quad one as well. So
correct, yeah. So they have a massive opportunity there. I think South Carolina's close, but losing record in the SEC is kind of a de facto, not getting the spot. And so we'll see. And
unless you're Auburn with the head of the committee.
Right. That's a good call right there. I remember that.
Plus this year it's Coastal Carolina, Tennessee. So remember that as well. They have their head coach retiring, and that'll come up in the play later on.
Oh yeah. I think they're getting in, but we'll talk about that.
I think so too.
Yeah. But I think Oklahoma State is worth a really close look. 17-9 is an excellent record in a power league. Also, Big 12 generally will get a couple of hosts each year, especially if you start to look at the amount of Big 12 teams we're going to look at later. Two hosts is very reasonable. So I think they get a long look. Duke as well, like you said, 15-12 ACC. RPI is a tiny bit off the grid at 22, but they have 12 quad one wins. Everybody's kind of liked them all year as a host. So Duke's very much in it. And NC State's in the top 20 now, and even better ACC record. But under 500 in both Q1 and Q2, I think that's too much for the Wolfpack to overcome personally. But what are your thoughts overall?
And just looking ahead real quick, I don't think this means anything, today, because they do have a chance to lose this series. But NC State, their last series of the year, they do catch Wake Forest in a big letdown spot after a sweep of Clemson. Wow. I think right now I would go Virginia. It's a pretty clean resume all around. Not too many black eyes in quad 3, quad 4 losses. They're 11-5 on the road. The big number there is the 107 non-conference strength of schedule for me. But I think the 6-6 quad 1 record is something that I think I would lean towards more than a Oklahoma State 9-11 in quad 1 with 2 quad 4 losses and a 120 non-conference strength of schedule. Who'd you have next?
Yeah, I'm actually good with that. Looking at it closer, I had Santa Barbara there, but Virginia, like head to head with Santa Barbara, has just done basically kind of the same pattern of results, obviously with way more opportunities. And and of course, there's a much higher quantity, a little bit more proof in the pudding. So I'll flip that and go with Virginia with you.
Okay. So Virginia's next. I think so. You have UC Santa Barbara ahead of Oregon State. I think that's a really interesting topic of conversation because Oregon State's only had 3 quad
I
one
know.
opportunities, which is just insane.
That
Being
doesn't
in the
make sense.
Pac-12, no, not
And
at
they
all.
try to schedule a national schedule too. It's not
Yeah,
like you know what I
and
mean.
52nd non-conference strength of schedule compared to UCSB's 144. So like
Right.
they attempted to schedule well, and I don't know how you can only have 3 quad one opportunities there. I feel like they played like a 4-game series against North Dakota State early in the year, and they're getting really penalized for that. But
That hurts.
I find it interesting. So like you are valuing UCSB's obvious conference strong record in the Big West 20-4,
Right.
but their winning road record as well over Oregon State here.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a little bit of an edge. I think it's really hard to go 20-4. In Big West is usually a little stronger.
Yeah,
but you've got a couple of different angles here where Hawaii has won 10 in a row. Cal Poly's good. Northridge was in a little bit of the bubble mix for a while, and then of course Irvine's awesome. So there are 5 good teams in the league. They swept. I want to say they swept at least 2 of those, maybe 3 of them, the other 3. So the only team they really struggled with was Irvine. Yeah. So,
and that was on the road too. So.
I just think that, I think they have a strong case if they can hang on to top 20. The problem is just based on RPI math, I think their last series against a down team, they might slip out of the top 20 just based on the schedule. So they could easily be argued out of here based on that because I think they need to be top 20. But I also think the committee, there's some history in this that I read about where if a team finishes top 20 from the Big West or a league like in the mid-major ranks, they're going to find a spot for them to host. Plus, getting us, up to 2 hosts in the West would be a preference, but obviously not a requirement either.
So, according to boydsworld.com, how much do you visit this website, by the way?
I need the link. I hear some of our friends in the industry talk about it sometimes, but
okay, I'll send you the link right now because it's fun to play
with.
UC Santa Barbara would have to finish 8-0 to be a top 16 RPI team. Which they have 8 games.
I heard that. So. Well, they don't have a conference tournament, so
no.
They're down to. Aren't they down? Do they have some midweeks left? Oh
yeah, that would be 2 midweeks and then 2 Big West series. So looks
like they're down to 6 left now. So
6. Okay.
Now they just got to go 6-0.
Web 6-0.
Yeah.
When was the last time this web was updated?
They've got to go. They go to Northridge for 3 on the road. I think that'll help them if they can just win the series. Maybe not even sweep, but obviously those Riverside games at the end are really bad. So. That's what they're looking at. Yeah,
for sure. So, yeah, you have to just win that series against Northridge, which I think I would have them doing that. So I'll say, yeah, like I'll give UC Santa Barbara that. And then I'm cool with going Oregon State Duke to round out top 16 because I like what you said about Duke with you have to honor the 12 quad one wins, right?
We got to get Indiana State in there. So I don't know where you want to pop them in.
Yeah.
I knew we were off by 1 there.
Yeah. I think.
Would you have them after East Carolina or after Virginia?
I would have them probably after Virginia and before Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely above Santa Barbara.
Virginia 6-6, 11-6. I think I would go with let's go with Indiana State. Virginia 12 losses in the ACC. It's not tremendous. So yeah, we'll switch them around real quick. Indiana State 13 seed, Virginia 14.
Okay.
I was looking too much at the resume metrics compared to just conference performance for Virginia there. All right, so Oregon State, Duke probably for the final 2 teams, and Oklahoma State. Final 3 teams competing for the 16th seed here.
Yes, I think it's tough, but but I did go Oregon State. It looks a little weird to have the last two spots both go to the West, but I think Oregon State, after handling their business yesterday and throughout the weekend, they've done enough to be a host. I wouldn't mind putting them 14, 15, 16. I think they just belong in there somewhere.
So Oregon State, with the 3 road games at Arizona, they just need to go 1 and 2, and they'll still be top 16. So yeah, I like Oregon State.
Yeah, because they're on the road. Yep.
Yep. Alrighty. So, and then we'll just fill in Duke or Oklahoma State in front of those two.
I'm okay either way.
Yeah, me too. I think I'll go Duke.
Duke's got a little, I mean, man, they're close.
Yeah. So top 16, we'll recap this real quick, and then we'll zoom through 2 seeds.
Sure.
Kentucky number 1 overall, Texas A&M 2, Tennessee 3, North Carolina 4, Arkansas 5, Georgia 6, Clemson 7, Florida State 8, Oklahoma 9, 10 Wake Forest, 11 Mississippi State, 12 East Carolina, 13 Indiana State, 14 Virginia, 15 UCSB, Oregon State at 16. Also, Rocco, I don't know if you are pinched on time and you want to start filling in more of the 2 seeds, but I'm gonna
I can do that.
quick. I can do the easy ones. All right, yeah, that's what I was talking about there for sure. I appreciate it, because I'm gonna tell the listeners about Game Time real quick, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which is getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time app actually go down closer that it gets to first pitch, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Personally, I used Game Time to go to the Jack Leiter MLB debut start in Detroit when the Texas Rangers were playing the Detroit Tigers. So Game Time really helped me out there. You can use our code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CFBX for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All righty. So Rocco has kind of filled in some of the easier ones that had received a couple of mentions in the top 16. UC Irvine at 19, South Carolina at 20, NC State at 21, Arizona 22nd, Dallas Baptist 23rd, San Diego 24, Alabama 25 with a really high RPI but a losing SEC record. So that one I feel like will get a lot of attention there. And then Oregon at 26th. Do you want to talk about any of the decisions on separating some of these teams, whether there was a couple of resume metrics that really favor one team compared to others?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, these aren't in any particular order. They're kind of no, that's okay. They're more in groups, and I tried to go in my best order I could, just off the cuff, because I've got them all baked into regionals now from finishing up earlier today. But I would just say Arizona, NC State, South Carolina, Oklahoma State. Maybe I can move Irvine down a little bit, but I think Oklahoma State, Duke, basically everybody 17 through 22 minus Irvine has a great shot still to host. So they're certainly in that next cut of teams, the way I look at it. And then I think the rest of these, going with Irvine and then DBU, San Diego, Alabama, Oregon, I think they would be pretty safe 2 seeds. We need up to 16 2 seeds. So basically that's how I did that. And I just ordered them the best I could, just based on the perceived strength of each. Okay.
So I think I might go South Carolina over UC Irvine. When you're comparing so you're saying you still want to reorder some of these, right?
Here, let me do this. I can do it real quick for us, because I'll just say Irvine's kind of more down here with this next 4.
All right. Yeah.
And then this would be my more true order here.
Okay. Yeah. Because Irvine, I think what knocks them down a little bit in this mix of teams is just the 7 combined Q3, Q4 losses is a little bit of a tough look when in the mix with like an Arizona team who's been pretty solid all season long. They do have the 6 Q3 losses, but it's not 7 combined, and well, it is 7 combined in Q3, Q4. So that might have been a bad example, but Arizona is currently regular season leader in the Pac-12.
Yes.
DBU, they are another mid-major that took a couple of blemishes, but in resume metrics, it's only 2 Q3 and 1 Q4 loss there. But I might not have been giving them enough credit. I remember like their tough 3-week stretch where
Yeah,
they
they had a
lost
bad one.
weekend series to Air Force, Louisiana Tech, and somebody else too. But yeah, that's overall not a terrible resume there. So I like DBU.
They're 21 in the RPI, and they've got to finish up at Middle Tennessee. Playing on the road will help a little bit, but Middle Tennessee is in the mid 200s, so I don't think there's enough room for them to pass this group of teams and get into a hosting position. So that's why I had them a little bit lower, just based on what they've accomplished and what's in front of them. Outside of that, there's really only one other tournament level team in their league, and that's Louisiana Tech. So even 1 or 2 more wins against Louisiana Tech probably isn't enough to get them into hosting position.
So are you currently like feel pretty good about Alabama 25th? If so, they're 11th RPI wise. They have 12 Q1 wins. That's just like something that a Roll Tide fan would point out to you.
Yeah,
One
well,
Q4 loss, 1 Q3. So overall, it's kind of clean. 142nd non-conference strength of schedule. What are your thoughts on the Crimson Tide this year?
Well, yeah, of course, it's not great to be under 500, but the league like the SEC, you could be a team like Alabama stuck in their place in the standings, but also be one of the 15 best teams in the country. Like the RPI is telling us they're a top 11 team. So they're when it comes to seeding teams, from my perspective, they're a dangerous team as a 2 seed that you probably don't want to be sticking next to, like North Carolina, who's the ACC champion. So I would just, from depending on how you seed them or place them in the bracket later, I would want to make sure they're going to probably not a top 8 location, or if they do, somewhere closer to 8 than the top 4. So I don't want to make them one of the bottom 2 seeds.
That makes sense, for sure. So you're good with the order that you kind of just inserted here?
I am. I had some others that might be even stronger, but I wanted to review them before popping them in. I thought these ones were mostly straightforward. So the rest of my list starts with the Louisiana Cajuns, who have pretty much almost locked up an amazing Sun Belt conference.
It's a really impressive campaign in the Sun Belt, which is very strong, and they all kind of just cannibalize each other. But to run away with that conference is really impressive.
So I think there's no doubt there are 2. And I would also kind of like the Alabama reasoning. I have them a little bit more of a premium 2 seed now. Not to give my whole bracket away, but I thought it was an easy assignment to put them in Starkville. And I think we had Mississippi State like number 11 or so. Yeah. I think that would be a perfect fit there for the Cajuns. We had them 11. So, somewhere in that range where you're not sending Louisiana to Texas A&M or to, Arkansas, because I think that would be unfair to those 2 teams.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if I've followed closely enough, but Louisiana currently 39th in the RPI.
Right, and that's the problem.
Jumping up to at least a 32 in like a seed line rank. So you still feel pretty comfortable them on top of the Sun Belt. It's 4th in RPI conference wise, I think currently. Their conference winner regular season winner should be a 2 seed.
I think so, and obviously, if there's more cannibalization, they'll slip out of that. But I think they've done enough with the 3-game lead in the standings. It's kind of the whole picture. You can't just say, if somebody wins the league by 1 game and everybody's pretty even, you could have 3 or 4 that all end up being 3 seeds. But I think with Louisiana's case, they're pretty clearly the red hot team. Nobody wants to play. If I'm an Arkansas or Texas A&M AD, I'm doing some politicking to make sure they don't come to my region, because that's they're nearby. Send them to Mississippi State, punish Mississippi State a little bit for not being the top 8, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know how much that goes on. I do think, the big time guys over at Baseball America and D1 Baseball have agreed for weeks that Louisiana's a 2. So that makes me feel confident this is where they're going to land if it ends right now.
Cool. The next team that I think I'll go ahead here and throw a team into the ring. I like Nebraska.
Okay.
Currently highest RPI in the Big Ten. Only one quad 4 loss. It is 6 quad 3 losses, but that's the nature of the league because it's not as strong this year. But it's a 10th non-conference strength of schedule. They are 13-8 on the road this season. I think this is a 2-seed resume as well. What do you think about the Cornhuskers?
Yeah, I think they're a 2-3 bubble in my opinion.
Okay.
They're down to 30 in the RPI. I know for a while they were low 20s.
Yeah.
And now they're 30. The Big Ten's been, they're 14-7, so that's obviously still one of the top. What are they in third place right now, or maybe second?
Nebraska tied for second. Yeah, they're one game behind Illinois. They go to Michigan State this weekend.
And I think this is a good chance. It's only a 2-bid league, no matter who wins the Big Ten tournament, because
I think so too.
All these teams fighting for first don't have much of an at-large. I don't know that Illinois or Purdue
and Maryland might even miss the conference tournament, and they've got the second best RPI in the league.
I know. Yeah, and if Maryland had a nice showing at Boston College where they had a chance to sweep, and if they would have, they'd have been maybe top 25 RPI. They were 29 yesterday morning before the finale.
Yeah.
And then they lose and fall back down to 35. But Maryland's the wild card. I thought Indiana was a wild card, but then they stubbed their toe themselves for at-large purposes. So I think for the sake of the exercise, this is a 2-bid league. And then at that point, how impressive is Nebraska? I don't know where they fall, but I can buy them as a 2. I just think they would be a low end 2 if they are
on the bubble for sure. Yeah, we've got 5 remaining spots on the 2 line. Did you mention Louisiana Tech would be one of your next teams?
They would be, yes, absolutely.
Because that's another resume that I think is impressive too.
Yeah, I'm definitely there on Louisiana Tech.
Okay.
And I'm, Southern Miss has come on strong, and they are up to 33, a very strong Sun Belt record, 18-9.
Yeah, so 2 weekends ago they had a loud sweep over Coastal.
That's right. And at one point they were either my last team in or almost out, and now they've just caught fire. So I think that Southern Miss with the pitching as well is like a team that definitely belongs on the 2 line, in my opinion.
Okay. So Southern Miss will throw in here. I'm typing in the wrong window.
You're good.
Then go ahead.
Yeah, and then my next 3, let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Definitely those 3, but we added Nebraska. So who am I missing here? We'll figure it out. So I do have these 3 kind of on the bubble as well, same as Nebraska. Oh yeah, we got the right math now. So the next 3 I would have is look at West Virginia, Texas, and UConn.
Okay.
And then maybe them mixed with Nebraska, one would get shut out.
So the UConn shout out is interesting for sure, because they did schedule an extremely tough non-conference. They hit the road into the state of Florida, and they went out west into California. They just didn't win many of those games. How much do you value scheduling the tough competition and not performing as well versus having a boatload of opportunities and not having to go out of conference to get those quad 1 opportunities?
Well, I think intent to schedule is brought up by a lot of different committees, certainly the basketball committee, and I'm sure in baseball they're doing that as well. So there's
because just comparing West Virginia and UConn to each other, it's a 31st non-conference strength of schedule for UConn, and West Virginia 137. And they can't really use the excuse of, oh, we're a Northeast team, regional, we can't get some great midweek competition. UConn went out and they did it in the non-conference, whereas the Mountaineers didn't.
Right. And I think UConn's also got a great pedigree, what they've done the last few years, and been kind of like the kings of the Northeast lately, at least coming into this season they were. So there's a respect factor, and they're finally reached their full potential here late in the year, which makes them a little dangerous. And I think some of it, to me, when it comes down to these last couple spots versus the top few 3 seed spots, you just lean on geography a little bit. I think UConn's a nice fit in Lexington. has Kentucky being the number 1 overall. So that was also part of my tiebreaker. But I'm okay with Nebraska as well, and really no strong argument again. I think Texas has played well enough lately to get up to a 2. So if it's between them or West Virginia, I would go Texas.
So you say you think Texas over West Virginia?
I think so.
Okay.
Plus, you can put them with Texas A&M, which is always fun.
Very fun. you could maybe even squeeze them. I don't know if you would want if you would value it fair competition or not, but if you give them a week 2 and then throw in one of the top 3s in the College Station being the Longhorns, that's fun. I think the question that a lot of people would bring up with Texas for sure would be the 8 Q1 losses. They've just not been able to win many midweek games this year. It's basically Florida of the Big 12 with a winning Big 12 record, a much better Big 12 record at that point for sure. So I've filled in UConn here, and then we have one remaining spot to kind of go and slot in here. Who would you have at 32?
Yeah, I still think Texas over West Virginia. Although they're both close, I'm okay with either. But okay. I think it'd be between those two. Would you throw anybody else into the ring?
I liked mainly the shouts that you gave out. I still think it's too early for Northeastern. Unfortunately, they've just kind of pissed on their legs lately.
They lost a series. Yeah.
And by the way, we don't care about the language that you use on this show. I don't know if you want to throw anything out there, but yeah, they lost 2-3 to North Carolina A&T. The Charleston series isn't bad. It was a very fun series to watch for sure. I went back and looked at a couple of those games. I have whatever it's called, the Flow Sports for the CAA. But yeah, those two teams. I hope the CAA can be a multi-bid league, but Northeastern just hasn't really performed well lately to prove that they are an at-large. But the RPI says they're 31st in the country, and it is an at-large team. But all right, so I agree with Texas at 32, I guess.
I had Wilmington for a while, but they slipped into the 40s, and I think that probably puts them as a 3 seed.
I think the 12 Q1 wins is loud for sure. So is it at this point when we have the three seed line to go? Is this where you start kind of going back to front, filling in some of the at-larges or the auto bids? Because that's kind of what I do, and then I figure out how many bubble spots I have. What's your philosophy on figuring this stuff out?
That's a good question. I like that. It's a process-oriented question. So what I like to do, Noah, is fill out the 16, get my host done, and then I jump straight into the left side of what you're seeing on the screen, which is I go league by league.
League by league.
Yeah, and then I've got if it's the first time I'm doing it, I basically will put their something to remember where they should fall, like their RPI is the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And then you can dive in deeper later. So that fills up most of the 4s and some of the 3s. And then once I'm done with all the leagues, I know exactly how many spots are left.
Gotcha. So you do it even after the top 16. Is that the same for college basketball? Like after you figure out kind of your 1 through 6 seeds in a bracket?
Yeah, basketball is totally different. So I have a tier-based approach. So you have all the teams that are in the mix for a 1 seed. That's my left column. Then I have a second tier and a third tier, and so it helps me because I do a preseason forecast every year that I really take a lot of pride in because it's based on all my scheduling discussions, meeting with teams from every single league. And then it's the only time I get to put my opinion in it. After that, once the season starts, it's all data driven.
Yeah.
So that's it for opinions. It's just that one crack in late October every year. But I'll do a second tier, a third tier. Then I've got a group of teams that I think are going to make it in without, being clear of the bubble. That's my 4th column. Then I have an entire bubble column where that splits into 2. One side's in, one side's out. And then a whole other list of teams that are on the periphery. So when I start a basketball season, it's upwards of 100 plus teams that are on the grid. And then, of course, after a couple of weeks, you start deleting some and adding some new ones, and it gets fun from there.
So is that kind of when you devise a travel schedule too, when you're figuring that out?
Yeah, from a game coverage standpoint, I like to see some of the squirrely dark horse teams early
Yeah.
because there's a good chance they might not be anything later in the year. So I'll basically I'll go watch pretty much anybody or cover anybody the November and December months. But once January comes in, I'm really drilling down into the conference races, and as long as you're in the mix for first place or in the mix for a bubble or NCAA tournament spot, that's a game for me worth covering. So it starts getting real specific as we get closer and closer, and then making sure I'm at either a meaningful game or a very fascinating game that impacts a race.
Oh, I'm fascinated by a lot of the games that I find you at on social media. It's outstanding. I love all the content for sure. So
I tried hard to get to a North Dakota game last year because they actually had a chance for first place if they won. It was just so hard to get there. It didn't work out.
Yeah, that the Summit League was very fun not having Oral Roberts at the top.
It was different. It was very different.
It was entertaining for sure.
It was.
As we're doing like the entire national scene coverage on college basketball experience as well. So I've kind of been filling him in, like a lot of the auto bids. I don't spend a ton of time dissecting bracketology wise because they are just kind of filled in right now, and it's all conference tournament related when it comes down to it at the end of the year. So I've done it kind of just based on RPI wise, weeding out kind of the weakest ones. And then I start to dissect it a little bit if the RPIs are close. Is that kind of what you do as well? How do you kind of handle the bottom of the bracket when not all these teams are guaranteed to get in?
Right. Yeah. I plug in the leader at the time, similar to basketball, but I mean, in most of these I don't publish, so it's not like it's just for my own sake. But but I will publish a couple here soon. So this is perfect timing for us. And so I'll have their basic RPI. My favorite part's the geography part. So
yes,
I know
I am fascinated by it. I can't wait.
right. So like if I have a High Point, who we have projected as the Big South,
Yeah.
you're going to want to try to get them in either Wake Forest region, which is where I put them.
Okay.
If they're a little bit worse on the RPI when you compare them to, I don't know, everybody else, like your Wright States, your Columbias, your Sacred Hearts, etc.
Yeah.
Then you might want to just put them all the way into North Carolina and give them a tougher one. But when you have a High Point, you can put them at Wake Forest happens to be in the same county as High Point, and I only know that from college basketball travel. So that's where maybe I have a little bit of an edge. So that's kind of an obvious one. Another extreme one was Austin P, where they're better than a lot of the 4 seeds. And they're obviously dangerous with they got the big slugger. I've read about him.
He came in with Roland Fanning from Oklahoma State. I was high on him in the preseason. Like I didn't expect this, but I figured that team was going to be good this year, and they have been.
Absolutely. So there's a little dangerous, but I think since they are in Tennessee, like putting them with Tennessee would be a preferred
makes for a
thing.
very fun regional, very explosive regional.
Very explosive. So, there's
Tennessee, if they have any lobbying power, they're like, send them to Indiana State.
Yeah, which is also a fit. But with there's other good teams like St. Louis that I think is a better fit for Indiana State. So, and then we got a little bit of a Josh Schertz revenge situation. So
that's fun.
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it, and like I said, I watch the selection show every year and record it actually. So
you can go back.
Yeah, I'll go back and watch the last 2 before I do the final one. So I'm sure I'll pick up on something, at least a fact or 2 that I didn't account for today.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the selection show as well. When they're going through a lot of how they weeded out some of those teams. Like I hate how on YouTube they cut out the interview process because that's like what I'm fascinated by.
Right.
But
it's the worst.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the only way you can get better too, is if you're really invested in just trying to be accurate, you got to learn from what they're saying. So it's the only way. That's the only way you can improve, unless you start calling them yourself.
Yeah,
which I've done both, but I'm a little over the top with it.
I love it though. All So I have two more Q4 teams to fill in. I was doing it as we're just chatting it up here.
Great.
Just weeding out some of the bottom of the RPI stuff for right now.
So I would go.
The last 4 seed, is that what you're trying to come in?
You only have one spot. You have one spot
Yep.
left.
1 4 seed spot left, and it's between Greensboro and Lamar, who have both been great. Lamar has a series sweep over Oklahoma. UNCG just beat Samford this weekend, which gave them the auto bid spot, but they've got 10 combined Q3, Q4 losses.
I think okay, this is where we were different because I think Samford's got them still in the loss column, don't they? By one? One fewer loss.
I was just giving it to Greensboro because they had the head-to-head.
They won the series. No, this is fun for the exercise because Greensboro does have the better RPI as well.
Yeah, Greensboro leads by a half game, so
they do, but they don't. If
they
Samford
don't have a weekend
out,
series left, yeah. So Samford sweeps the remaining.
Wofford at home, which is a tough one. So this certainly could go either way.
Yeah,
but no, sure. I would actually go let's just go with yours because I think this is a challenge. I would actually put Lamar as a 4. I think Greensboro's got a little bit better credentials. What do you think?
So Lamar 26-4 in Q1, 3 Q2 losses as well, and those 3 Oklahoma wins are impressive. 3-1 in Q1.
True.
And UNCG 2-5 in Q1.
You think it's Greensboro then?
So Greensboro scheduled better than Lamar too, but Lamar took advantage of their chances, like with not as many opportunities. How do you weigh that? Again, with the intent to schedule thing.
No, you're probably right. Yeah, the breakdown favors Lamar here. Straight RPI. They have the same. Interesting. They're both 15-6 in their respective leagues. I think the SoCon's a better league, so that's impressive if they are the true champion.
Yeah, Lamar is
I could see it going both ways.
4 seed though. Like Lamar is not fun for whoever hosting down here in the South in the bottom.
in Lamar's favor a little bit. I guess you could tweak things a little bit too. Greensboro's not far from Tennessee, for example. They could easily be the 3 seed in Knoxville, but you could have Lamar at Texas A&M as an easy natural fit there. As the 3.
So as like a week 3.
As a week 3.
That makes sense.
Because one of them's going to be a week 3. So sometimes I just go with the more obvious geography fit. Because I actually think the committee might go that way as well.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier when you're weeding in some of the location.
Right.
Sure.
You could put Greensboro as the 3 in North Carolina as well, but then you're going to put a power when you do all the math later. You'll probably have to put a power conference team with one of the top 3 teams. So
there is a ton of Carolina hosts. So I mean, you'll have plenty of opportunities to slot in Greensboro. One team I kind of overlooked, I actually forgot about the 58 RPI at the top of my left side here, Illinois. Would you throw a top 5 conference team in the 4 line?
No, I don't see it. I mean, I would if if somebody wild or even like an Iowa won the Big Ten tournament, but not the regular season champion.
No. Yeah, they're 4-10 in Q1 though. So like when they've stepped up in competition, they haven't really taken care of business. But yeah, I think Illinois goes to the 3 line as well as UNC Wilmington there. But I think Wilmington's not going to be at the bottom of this Q3 conversation. And I'll not even fill in Illinois. I'll put them over here too.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, even if it's Maryland or Purdue or Indiana, like if any of those win the Big Ten as well, they're not going to be 4s either. So I think the best representation for what's going to come is to keep them as a 3.
Yeah. So I'm putting bubble teams on the screen now. We have Northeastern that could be in the conversation here. We have Coastal Carolina that probably is going to be in the conversation here. Mm-hmm. We have Kansas State, who's around 500 in the Big 12. TCU also in the same boat. And this is going in order of RPI. West Virginia also there. They're much better in the Big 12 compared to Kansas State and TCU. And they also just won the weekend series over Kansas State. Oregon is a team that you've mentioned previously on the show. They're 46th in RPI. I like James Madison this year and Troy as well.
We have Oregon as a 2 seed.
Oh, we have Oregon up there.
Yeah.
All right.
Just because they've had a good Pac-12 record and been ranked and
totally forgot about
little different. Yeah.
Totally forgot about the Ducks up there.
No problem.
Any other teams that you're throwing out here? We got to fill in.
Oh yeah.
I've 5 more spots.
I've got some juicy ones.
Okay.
So I think if you're going to add TCU and Kansas State, you got to have Cincinnati.
I love Cincinnati.
They're interesting. 16-11 in the league now. Can't ignore that. It's been easier to ignore them earlier.
I love the head coach. He was up here with me around in Central Michigan. Completely built that program, and now you can see how good of a caliber of coach he is. Central Michigan's got like 9 conference wins in the MAC right now.
I was wondering. I've been meaning to look that up because I was curious. How is Fire Up Chips not firing up this year? They're not firing up anything.
No. Also, I like St. John's in the conversation too. I don't know.
Yeah, St. John's definitely. We can eventually put Xavier. They have a strong RPI.
Oh yeah, they're all the way up there.
Right? UCF as well. Obviously under a weird profile, but they have 5. I counted earlier. They have 5 series wins against projected tournament teams, so that's going to be very favorable for them in bubble discussions.
Yeah, I love that stat and conversation as well. Their record against the field.
Right. I wish I had that for everybody. I just look up a couple each time. They were one of them. I would say Vanderbilt's in here. Georgia Tech's in here.
I like Charleston as well.
Charleston, Utah.
Yeah.
You already put Troy. I would say.
Who'd you say in between?
I would put Ole Miss on the board somewhere.
Okay. So
Ole Miss,
if you throw Ole
Miss,
I think LSU and Florida have to be right there with them.
Right. Ole Miss has the one game edge on both in the conference. And Ole Miss finishes with LSU.
And LSU's got the better overall record than Florida. Florida might not even qualify.
Exactly. I heard they were scrambling to get a couple games added, but I don't know if they pulled that off.
I don't think they did.
Yeah.
So they've got to go into Georgia, who's red hot, and win 2 or 3.
And then even I would like to get your opinion on Kansas. They've got a 3-game over 500 Big 12 record, but they're still in the mid 60s RPI. There's just all sorts of chaos in the Big 12. And Louisville was close, but I think them getting beat up this weekend killed them for now.
Yeah, it stopped a lot of momentum because I did like what Louisville had been building for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know how you feel. It's probably too far-fetched now, but maybe if they finish strong, keep them in the same category as Louisville would be like App State's creeped into the top 64 with a strong Sun Belt record. I haven't done a lot of digging on them. I don't think there's a spot for them yet. But did we get Wilmington?
Yeah, Wilmington is up there with Illinois. I forgot to write them down next to Illinois, but they're currently projected in auto.
And then we got Georgia Tech. Okay.
Yep.
I think that's my. Did we get Virginia Tech? We got.
No, we did not. But they've not been trending in the right direction.
No, they haven't. I'm worried about them. In fact, they have a brutal finish too. Which
they had a very friendly start to the conference. They played Notre Dame, Louisville, Boston College, and Pitt, and they swept 3 of those. And those are the bottom 5 teams in the ACC. So it was a very, very friendly beginning, and then just gauntlet to finish. And they have not. The Miami series was the put up or shut up series, and they lost it. To me, I don't think Virginia Tech's in that large anymore. The way they've played to finish the year. I like
that. I'm leaning towards getting them out. Probably taking another Big 12 for today, but I would say tomorrow James Madison is at Virginia Tech for midweek. And then for the weekend, Virginia Tech finishes at Virginia. So a series win at Virginia, no matter what happens in JMU, might be enough to put them
raise
back
the
in.
RPI for sure.
Raise the RPI, and it would guarantee them a winning ACC record. They're 1 over 500
which is strong.
Now. Very strong. I don't think they'd be left out in that. So I think their season, at least not counting ACC tournament results, it comes down to Charlottesville.
So also in this conversation with some of the SEC teams that have just been kind of thrown onto the board here, everybody talks about the conference, record, where these teams currently have 11 and 10 wins respectively. The Rebs have 11, LSU and Florida. Florida with 11, LSU with 10. Is it correct? Yeah, 10 wins for LSU.
They need a sweep, I think.
How much do you look at how many bids each conference gets?
Well, for a lot of these other leagues, I look at it pretty closely. I think for the SEC, there's some stat like you got to win at least 13, and that can include Hoover. But I think the ones that I've heard mentioned in going back like 10 years that got in, they had to have had multiple wins over number 1 or number 2. So like Ole Miss just beat Texas A&M twice, so they've kind of got that special something in there. LSU's been hot against good teams, so those are two where maybe they
LSU's got the wins over A&M too.
Exactly. So whoever comes out of that mix this weekend, and if one of them sweeps, they're in really good shape.
Yeah,
and
then play each other.
And then in Hoover, it's that interesting format where you get a single elimination game, but if you win that, you guarantee yourself 2 more chances.
Yeah,
which you could lose the next one, but then still beat somebody really good in the losers bracket. And all those wins count towards what the committee looks at. So this is, Hoover will be a very dramatic situation for these 3.
Alrighty, so let's kind of weed out some of the bubble teams that we've established here. I think it's easy to kick off Florida, and this is coming from a guy who is a Florida fan. I don't think we're winning the series in Georgia. And if you don't do that, if you don't steal at least one of those games and get to 12, you would have to win 2 in Hoover. I just think it's a really uphill battle for Florida. 1, to just stay above 500, and 2, to take care of what they need to take care of. So I think Florida's an easy bounce. And then we've got to get rid of 5 more.
Yeah, and I would have LSU out still for, same exact conference record. Obviously easier path because I think Florida's got another tough series this weekend. But I think since we're basing it off today, they're pretty easy to get rid of.
Yeah. So Ole Miss, you like the 24th ranked RPI too?
They dropped to did they drop to 27 today? Or is it 24?
I think it's 24. I'm looking.
You're right, 24. Yeah, they were 22 and they dropped to 24. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I just think they have the path to 13, assuming they can either win 2 of 3 against LSU or get a win in Hoover plus 1 against LSU. And I think if they don't, that puts LSU in instead. So I think from a, like you asked earlier, from a conference bid representation standpoint, this is kind of the right way to go about it. I think you'll see one of those 3 make it. Harder to see 2 of the 3, and
I'll be honest,
also harder to see 0 of the 3 too.
Yeah, one of the 3 is probably getting in. I'll be honest. I think LSU wins that series against Ole Miss too.
Okay.
But there is a thing
if you want.
There is a thing as well. Like we probably have to leave both on because, like, the lowest RPI team to not make the field was I think 31 or 32 in that vote. And if Ole Miss is sitting at 24 with 12 SEC wins, if they were to take one of LSU's games, or if they were to win 1 game in Hoover,
well, I think that gets them in because I think they just need 2 total wins, however they happen.
Yeah.
Just because that magic number of 13, I don't know. Is there any examples of anybody only winning 12 and getting in? I swear that was
I don't think it's ever happened, but it's been talked about for sure, in conversation.
Well, we could leave them both on the board just for as we go through the rest.
Sake.
Yeah. Virginia Tech's very fringe. Well, I agree with that. And I don't mind kicking them out if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I don't feel confident about their finish at all this season.
It's tough. I think
Yeah.
I also think, just to skip up the board a little bit, I think between St. John's and Xavier, only one would get in. And I struggled with which one is better.
Yeah.
Obviously Xavier's got the RPI, but St. John's is having a much better
I
conference
think
season. St.
correct. I
John's
think
also
the
had the scheduling bad
mishap
luck
with
when the
Florida.
yeah, but they also went to Houston and won that series. They went and played a lot of good teams, and they intended a strong schedule. I think that helps St. John's a lot.
Yeah, I think I like St. John's on the field better, but Xavier has like the better RPI right now. That's another tough conversation to have. I mean, Xavier
Xavier
with
is so
9
they're so
quad
close
3
to 500
losses.
though. You
I
know,
know. That one's one that doesn't make sense RPI wise at all.
I
Because
think it's easier to keep Xavier out. Just my opinion, based on what you said, the 9 losses in quad 3,
I agree, but that
another
also
bad
gets
loss.
to the RPI thing. Like they're also 27th in RPI. It's very confusing.
It is.
with 10 combined Q3, Q5 losses, and St. John's only has 5. And St. John's did intend to schedule well, but it's still
It is.
202nd non-conference strength of schedule.
And Xavier gets to crack at Oklahoma tomorrow, and Oklahoma struggled in midweek, so they could be going up again in that number if they win that tomorrow. But the Villanova finish at home, that will kind of, even if they sweep Villanova, it's probably going to make their RPI go down a little bit.
That'll probably have them in the 30s. So yeah, I agree. I like St. John's in the field better.
Yeah, Xavier also, like, here's the kicker: you combine quads 1 and 2, they're just 8 and 13. I mean, you're comparing them to, I don't know, like look at Northeastern, for example. Northeastern's a much stronger.
Even St. John's, they're 7 and 8.
Exactly. Northeastern's over 500. You know, even LSU's better than that. They're 15 and 18, right? So, I think it's easier to kick out Xavier despite the strong RPI.
Yeah. And as much as I want to root for the CAA, I don't know if they get 3 bids either.
Right. Yeah, I went ahead and kicked out. Well, I put in Charleston as my auto bid, so I missed that one too. But that they're tied, and I think Charleston won the series, right, over Wilmington. They won 2 out of 3.
Did they?
So if Charleston's the auto bid, it makes it easier. But I actually
Charleston did win at UNCW. That's a good point. The only reason why I had UNCW ahead of Charleston was because they have the half game lead. But I do like the road series win over UNCW.
Right. Yeah, it's tough because, you know, I think Northeastern's done enough to get in. If Charleston's the auto, that made it easy for me to put them in.
Yeah.
They're also 3 games up on Northeastern in the conference standings.
Correct. And they have series wins over both Northeastern and UNCW.
Right. I mean, I had Northeastern actually as my last team in. So I had all 3 of them in. I don't know how realistic that is for the future, because they're all they're all 3 seeds. And, you know, I think Wilmington's by far the safest.
Yeah.
But I think Northeastern's done enough. I mean, I still like them over a lot of these other options. Certainly like them over like some of these Big 12 options. So
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You gotta pick a field.
Yeah. I think I also feel comfortable as of right now booting Georgia Tech. 215th non-conference strength of schedule. Wow. 8 and 10 in Q1, 5 and 3 in Q2, and they've got 5 Q3 losses with 1 Q4 loss. So they didn't schedule well. They've got 6 tough losses there, and they're a 500 team in the ACC. I think you can find better in that conference for sure.
Yeah, well, I would say, you know, maybe it's down to G-Tech or V-Tech. I have a hard time seeing both getting left out, especially since Georgia Tech's played much better ball down the stretch.
They have. And
they get a crack at Florida State this week. We'll see what happens where that's going to be played, but they'll find a way to play.
Oh, they will.
And Georgia Tech's 13 and 13. They're 500 in quad 1 and 2, whereas Virginia Tech is 3 and 10. They're 8 and 12 combined. I think G-Tech's clearly in over V-Tech, in my opinion.
For sure.
Same quad. And it's hard. It's just hard for me to see them both getting left out. That's all.
Okay.
I don't know. But
So out of the couple of Sun Belt teams that we also have included, we've got 3. I don't think Sun Belt survives.
Yeah, and I think
On
I think that's bad news for James Madison personally.
yeah,
James Madison was really
7-14
looking
in Q1 and Q2, like you have been mentioned a couple of times here.
right, and well, their strong suit for a long time was their stronger RPI, but that started to dip.
Yeah,
And now they're all the way down to 47. And their combined Q1, Q2, 7-14. I mean, they're pretty easy compared to a lot of these teams to kick out, in my opinion.
yeah. I like that boot too, because I mean, even if you're looking head to head with Troy, who's 48th in RPI, 1 spot behind him, Troy's 12-10 in Q1 and Q2. James Madison did schedule better in the non-conference, but Troy played better against the tougher competition. So,
yeah, look at their side by side road records. 17-10 for Troy, 7-14 for James Madison. It's like that just makes it so crystal clear.
Yeah.
I like that. And like you said, Coastal's they are 13-14 in the league behind
They're
James Madison. They're gonna find a way in, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
they finished with at Marshall. So just
favorable.
They don't want to lose 2 out of 3 there.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
so we've got 2 more that we've got a boot here with just 2 extra auto bids, and then we'll kind of seed most of these teams.
This might be a hot take, but I would kick out both, and I need to look at it a little closer, so good ones to bring up. I actually have both TCU and Kansas State out. But I am open for discussion on those because, and I'll just pull them up. I know they have good RPIs in the high 30s, but their quad 1 opportunities, both had a lot, both very far under 500 in those bigger games. They both taken, at least a handful of bad losses, and their combined Q1 and Q2s are both under 500 by a good margin. TCU at 8-13, K-State at 12-18. And they're both sub 500 in the league. Those are. I think those are enough cons to outweigh the pros, at least in this snapshot in time. They, of course, have every one of these Big 12 games. It seems like each morning it flips who's on the good side, who's on the bad side. And this is just where we're at right now.
I agree. And just looking at the conference's bubble teams right now, West Virginia is definitely the team that I would have slated over both Kansas State and TCU here.
Yeah, definitely. And I had West Virginia pushing as a 2, so I feel like they're very, very solid. I went with UCF over the.
I was about to say, where did you have UCF here?
Over the purple power combo of the Big 12, which is K-State and TCU. Mainly just UCF. UCF is one of my last teams in, but those 5 series wins, strong non-conference, floating close enough to 500 in the league. I think it's just enough to keep them in, but again, there's so much to play for. Each game kind of shifts this.
All 3 of these teams, I think, have favorable finishes to the year.
Yeah, so
TCU hosts West Virginia, so maybe that's not favorable, but Kansas State's going to win 2 or 3 against BYU. I feel pretty comfortable about that. And UCF, I think, wins 2 or 3 against Baylor.
But they're at Baylor, and these are the kinds of series that UCF's been falling in. So
yeah. True.
Yeah, it's a lot to assume.
They are 10-8 on the road this season, though.
They are. Yeah, they just did so much damage early. They've been hanging on ever since. That's what it feels like to me. West Virginia playing TCU in Fort Worth. I mean,
I think I like the TCU bounce for sure.
Yeah. And then the other team I'm most curious about is Kansas. I think they have a hard series to finish. So if they somehow win it, let's double check that.
Yeah, they're at Texas.
They're at Texas. So if they win that series, it's going to be hard to leave them out. Especially that would put them at least 4 games over in the league.
Yeah, I would feel very comfortable about Kansas winning game 1. They have one of the best Friday starters in the Big 12, and Texas has an inverted rotation where they're starting Max Grubbs game 1, and he's their 3rd best arm. It's a very favorable game 1. You're just asking Kansas to win one of the next 2 But even if they get game 1, like I think they do, they're guaranteed a winning record in conference.
Yep.
It's a good point.
Yeah, they've just floated around, and there's so much in the middle. It's kind of like who's gonna rise above, and they've been the team trying harder than some of the others. So it's been really fascinating, actually.
Yeah. So 65th RPI, they're 7-12.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that.
So I would say
controversial.
They're probably first 4 out range.
Yeah, they were my first team out, but I also had TCU as second team out. So, I mean, they're really close.
I like that shout for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then on Cincinnati, I have Cincinnati in. I think they've done enough. 16-11. They're now.
Who do they finish with?
They're actually 12-13 in the top 2.
And their RPI is going up because, like you said earlier in the show, I believe they have a midweek game where they host UConn.
They have an awesome. Yeah, and then they host Oklahoma. They have a huge week at home. So if they I think any combination of 2 and 2,
that's a fun week.
Yeah, any combination of 2 and 2 should do the trick, because that will probably even increase their RPI or at least keep it steady. Yeah. And then their final record in the league at worst would be 17-13. But then if that's the case, they would have an extra good win over UConn at home.
I like that.
I think Cincinnati going 2 and 2 at home, that's not too much to ask.
I think the easiest bounce out of this bunch is one of the CAA teams. Charleston, UNCW, or Northeastern. Unfortunately.
Yeah, then it's probably.
We haven't talked about Utah at all either.
Yeah, Utah, I'm just concerned they're all the way down to 71. I've been in their corner most of the way just because they have been a strong pack. They were in first just 2 weeks ago. But now you look, combine 1 and 2, that's helping them. They're 9-9, so it's not terrible. But they have 9 bad losses in the next 2. That's a heavy number.
Yeah,
and that's
know.
But that explains their RPI, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. Your RPI gets killed.
Yeah, I think it actually taking a little bit of a deeper look. They're also 251st in non-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah, that hurts a lot.
The Pac-12 hasn't been too strong this year. No. 11 losses isn't like I need to have this team in the field too.
Right. Plus they're the easy if anybody besides Arizona, Oregon, or Oregon State doesn't win the Pac-12 tournament, it's somebody else like an Arizona State or a USC or a Cal, it'll be very easy to leave Utah out. So I think this feels like, and again, a lot more to go here, but it feels like it's going to be a 4-bid league. But if anybody steals it, Utah's the odd team out.
Yeah.
But that's why I kept Utah penciled in for this week, just as that 4th team.
But 9-9 in Q1 and Q2.
Yeah, which is better than some of these, but it's very borderline. They're basically getting in on conference record.
They are, and I don't know how much weight that holds this year for sure.
Right. So it's if you wanted to kick them out, I could live with that. I think if you're looking to kick out a CAA, Charleston's got to be the one, because although they've got the credentials to maybe be the champions, if they are in the at-large pool, they
didn't schedule well.
Yeah, I mean they had a 200-plus schedule. That's probably going to be the killer. Yeah. They got an incredible 12-3 road record,
and I like what they did in Q1 and Q2 too. Like their quality of wins are very good. And I
think it's actually easier to take them than Utah, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think Utah is my vote right now, which is.
And then who else is out there? I mean, Troy's getting in. I'm not worried about Troy. I think Georgia Tech's getting in. I mean, it'd probably be LSU out, but we've already had that discussion.
Yeah, like those 2 are interesting for sure. That's probably. I would differ with you. I think LSU wins that series against Ole Miss, and they would probably fare better.
That's your area of expertise, so I'm good with that.
Ole Miss, I like them out too.
Oh, well, if you're taking them out, then LSU will just be the replacement.
Yeah, that's everybody.
Then
So
we can keep Charleston and Utah, and everybody's happy.
yeah, for sure. And then now you have SEC land coming at you.
That's all right. It'll all change after this weekend anyway.
Yeah, our conference strength is much higher, much better than yours. So yeah, let's do that. Let's take the easy way out. We'll take out Ole Miss, in my opinion. I think that's the weakest of the bunch. Their RPI is like the highest of the bunch, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to have enough SEC wins to get in.
Okay. It's interesting because they do have a 1-game lead on LSU coming in, but you know the matchup better.
I feel pretty confident that LSU wins that series in Baton Rouge.
That would actually be great for the league because Ole Miss still can get in with a little run and
with the RPI. So. It favors them a little bit better, for sure. Alrighty, so these are the 3 seed lines. Do you care at all about how they are currently ranked before you go seeding at all, or
a little bit? I try to group them in little clusters to just again. I would be curious to see how the committee does it. I know geography is very important, but then besides that, you would your next best criteria would be probably strength. So you want to put the stronger teams in the weaker hosts, right? So.
Yeah.
I would say if, like in LSU's in the field, they would still probably, from a seeding perspective, you want to put them in with a little bit of a lighter host, if you will. And then my next best teams would be, UNCW, Vanderbilt. I think everybody else is fairly even. So just those 3 stand out to me. Georgia Tech maybe too, just because they've been hot.
100%. All right,
and again, it's just about protecting your top teams.
For sure. And like you said, this is your favorite part. That's my favorite part as well. Having fun and creating the hypothetical regionals based on the locations. Throw out some of your favorite matches here. Take any of the specific regional locations and kind of throw out what makes sense the most to you and what teams are like a good fit in the regional sites.
Yeah, so just based on what we built here, I think right off the bat, Kentucky with UConn is good. I think Texas A&M with Texas is good.
Yeah,
I think
everybody's rooting for that.
Right. I think I would have I think we got the order right with the 2 Louisiana schools, Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
So I would actually have Louisiana Tech with Arkansas. Plus, geographically, Ruston is further north than Lafayette, so it's an even easier trip for La Tech to get there than the Cajuns.
Louisiana Tech to Mississippi State, Louisiana.
Yeah, and I had Louisiana with Mississippi State. That one's a nice one. And then, since Southern Miss is the leftover and they're down by the Gulf, I think they're a nice fit with Florida State. I know they've done that in the past, but not any time in the last couple of years. So I think we're safe with that. I thought Duke with East Carolina made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because they can't be with Virginia. And then just as kind of a middle America team, I went with Oklahoma State to be paired with Indiana State.
Do you like Nebraska at Oklahoma?
I do.
Because I think you didn't have Nebraska as a 2 seed, right? Prior.
Yeah, so that was one
of the 2s.
I would try to get Nebraska closer to the middle, but I guess Oklahoma's the next best place. And that's where it gets funky because we have a lot of West Coast teams that
we do.
I end up sending like a bunch of West Coast teams to Oklahoma, but Nebraska makes a lot of sense too. So I'm good with that.
Yeah. This year might have a lot of West Coast teams flying into Carolinas just because there's so many hosts in that region.
For sure. And then I thought South Carolina with Virginia was easy.
Okay.
Just based on them both being host contenders, you might as well combine them.
Yeah.
And then Irvine.
Some of the West Coast. So
Irvine needs to go to Corvallis. And then I had Arizona going to Santa Barbara. You could put San Diego there too. But I thought Arizona was a little stronger right this second, even though they're
I
both
think
awesome.
that balances the competition too.
Yeah, give them a power team, right? It looks weird if you have two mid-majors like that.
The NCAA is not going to throw two mid-majors into the same region either, right?
Yeah, doesn't seem like it. And then from there, you're kind of just playing with it. I had NC State going to Georgia, but with Georgia all the way up at 6 now, that might be a little too strong. But they can't go to Wake, and they can't go to Clemson.
Correct.
And if you put Oklahoma State with Indiana State, I think that makes more sense. So they would have to go to Georgia.
Yep.
So that solves those two. Then I thought Alabama with Clemson. But you could also do Alabama with Wake. I'm good with either.
Clemson's isn't Wake further west, right?
It is. No, Clemson's closer to Alabama.
Oh, it is?
Yes. So Wake will just take a random. I put
San Diego.
I put Dallas Baptist at Wake.
DBU. That would be fun.
But either one would.
Yeah, both DBU and San Diego kind of just get slotted in at the end, don't they?
They do. And then the
Tennessee is a interesting northern.
Well, it comes down to who do you think's stronger? Like we had Dallas Baptist by a hair.
Yeah.
But you would put the stronger one in Wake.
At 10, yep.
And then you would put the other one at UNC. They're both going to North Carolina. They're both going to Tobacco Road.
A lot of nice golf over there, I hear.
Yeah. And then with Tennessee, that would just leave we already did Nebraska, so who's left?
Oregon. Is that the last one?
And Oregon's fine there. See, that's why I end up with West Virginia as a 2.
They sent Oregon and Vanderbilt last year too.
I know. They did. But it happens. I mean, as a Washington guy, Washington got sent to Vandy before as well. We got sent to Oklahoma State last year.
You're getting sent to Florida in softball.
Exactly. No, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yeah.
Is it Missouri?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which, I don't know. I feel like we should be a lot better. So I don't know. Hopefully they can win that thing. Okay, so we're happy with this?
Yeah, I am.
Okay,
I think that all slots in pretty good.
And then I think at the top of the threes, it's very easy to put Lamar at A&M. That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
I also like this. I might have to explain it to you a different way to get you there. But I know Cincinnati's not our weakest option, but them going to Kentucky just makes so much sense.
It's only a short hike.
Yeah, it's right down there. It's right down the street. So I have Cincinnati there. I think also, do we have Virginia Tech out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out. Okay.
Yeah, I unfortunately gave you the boot on that.
I know. I lost both my obvious Tennessee teams.
Northeastern is up there, so that's an easy send to one of the more northern, because we already have Cincinnati to Kentucky. So I think Northeastern would also, but Northeastern's one of the strongest 3 seeds. Or actually, we didn't order that. Never mind.
We didn't order that. Here's an easy one for you. Put Charleston and Clemson.
Yeah.
We'll start with the easy ones. And then you throw UCF at Florida State. That's a simple one.
Yeah.
And then any of these other ones? I liked Vanderbilt going to Indiana State because they're probably going to throw 2 strong teams with
makes
Indiana.
sense.
Yeah. And then
UCF, Florida State.
Just because Wilmington's probably one of the strongest 3s, I had Wilmington at Virginia.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Mm-hmm. And then I kind of like Georgia Tech going to Mississippi State because they've already got a mid-major as the 2.
That is a fun matchup of styles there.
They've done regionals together a few times in history, so I like that. I thought just because it's hard to find a place for this team, you can either put them in, and they're one of our last teams in. So
I might have to override. I think Dub V in Tennessee would just be a very fun regional.
Oh, right. Well, I had Dub V as the 2 there, so that'd be a strong regional to put them both. But you could do that.
It's just very fun with the two fan bases going at each other.
No problem. Let's do it.
Which one? Rocky Top versus Country Roads.
Love it.
Yes. Either way, it's Northeastern or West Virginia. Actually, Northeastern was probably one of the weaker ones, so I'll remain.
West Virginia should be probably in the stronger group, maybe with East Carolina and Duke, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's pitting up Mac and Colby. I like it.
Yeah, get it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, that'll be fun for socials.
That's beautiful.
Troy makes sense at Mississippi State, but we've got Georgia Tech there. But we already have Louisiana there too.
I kind of like Troy. I like Troy going over to Georgia.
Okay.
Although that's tough draw for everybody, but
Troy does have one of the weaker RPIs, so
yeah,
they might just get slotted into one of these top southern regions for sure. And
for Arkansas, just because Illinois is one of the weaker threes, I put them in Arkansas.
Okay,
thought that made sense.
That does.
Did
you say somebody about North Carolina too? I might have missed that one.
Not yet, but you could put Coastal there. I just don't think the committee chairman will. So, we might want to save them.
Yeah,
you could do.
They're probably. I mean, you don't probably get your way. Both of them are going to be dangerous. North Carolina and Wake. They're both there.
Exactly.
You're not going to be able to choose.
That's right. It's tough.
Yeah.
You could put St. John's there if you want in North Carolina. I mean, in any them or Wake. I mean, they're probably going one or the other. And then I think maybe Coastal goes with Wake and do St. John's with UNC.
Do you think, when you're talking about them trying to not have two mid-majors in one regional, do you think St. John's being from the Big East is a little bit from a...
I don't think it matters that much for if you're Wake, because I think Wake's perceived to be strong.
Yeah.
And Coastal's, I mean, is Sun Belt a power conference? I think they're pretty even.
Yeah, they're actually better baseball-wise than Big East, but the Big East probably has a little bit more money too.
That's what I'm saying. The Coastal will go to the Demon Deeks in this case. Just my gut on that.
Yeah. We have two West regionals here with Santa Barbara and Oregon State.
Yeah, so Utah it has to go to Oklahoma because they can't go to the Santa Barbara or Oregon State.
Correct. And LSU, they sent to Oregon State in 2019, 2018.
Yeah, so put them in Cali.
Oh, wait, no, we already have Arizona and UC Santa Barbara.
Right, so Utah's in Oklahoma. Yep.
Gotcha, yeah.
Then LSU there. LSU to Santa Barbara.
That makes sense. They'll send an SEC team to the mid-major host.
That's right. Then whoever our odd team out goes to Corvallis.
Yeah.
And who is that?
Is it UNCW?
I think it's Kansas State.
Yeah, it's Kansas State.
Which makes a lot of sense. That's good.
It does.
That's a good team there. All right, so then the fours, this is where I have a lot of fun with this. So Grand Canyon's one of the strongest fours, so you'd put them as close to home as possible, which is
Florida A&M. You can put the two Tallahassee teams into the same regional, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can do that. I had Texas Southern as the rep, so I obviously missed that. But Florida A&M's got just as good of a shot.
They get to sleep in their own beds there, too.
They do.
St. Louis to Arkansas?
No, I have St. Louis to Indiana State. Josh Schertz Bowl.
That is fun.
St. Louis is the best. They're the best 4 seed by the RPI.
Okay.
So besides Greensboro. But you
Greensboro.
probably want to put Greensboro in either Virginia or East Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm good with either, whatever you think. East Carolina is actually closer. It's in the same state.
Yeah.
And then you could do Columbia's got one of the best out of the leftovers. So
Yeah.
you could put
I
Columbia.
actually ranked these teams too, by the way, based off of mainly RPI, but
perfect. Same here.
cool.
So I put
Columbia.
Columbia to Virginia. And then I put Grand Canyon to Santa Barbara.
They've done that recently too, within the last 2 years.
Oh, that's right. So maybe we should flip Columbia and Greensboro because I think they try to avoid that.
Okay.
Good call. Columbia was actually a three seed there.
Mm-hmm.
They played Gonzaga.
Yeah, Gonzaga was
Yeah. So Grand Canyon to Santa Barbara. And then I think just by default, let me know if you agree with this. Fresno State's a really weak West team. Their RPI is all the way up to 173.
They've completely crashed. That was the team that I kind of liked.
So I'm throwing Fresno into Oklahoma's because it's a little bit more balanced for how good they are or how bad they are. And then for Oregon State, I just give them the strongest team left, which was Bowling Green, as their 4.
Okay.
If you agree with that. And then
yeah, that does make sense.
High Point is a perfect fit for Wake Forest, same county.
Yeah.
Then you have a cluster of East Coast teams combined with Wright State.
Bowling Green wouldn't be in consideration for like a Tennessee or Kentucky, mainly Kentucky.
I don't think they're
probably too good for Kentucky.
They're too good. They're like they're the 4th best of the 4 seeds. So, I mean, they could do it, but that would be kind of messed up.
Yeah. And then Austin Peay in the middle of the pack, they have a very good shot at going to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's where I've got them.
Okay.
Until their RPI goes up a little higher, then we can maybe move them around. And then Little Rock to Arkansas. And you got High Point. I'm stuck now on Mississippi State. I guess for Mississippi State, you just give them the best team because there's no geography fits, and that would be Wright State there.
Right. I don't think Wright State usually is a good program, but I don't think this year they're good enough to wreak havoc on any SEC host, unfortunately.
Right. So then these next 3 spots, the Carolina, Georgia, and Clemson.
The Northeast teams.
I just go in order. So I think the order is, unless you have it different, Sacred Heart, Bryant, Army by RPI. So Sacred Heart would go to North Carolina, Bryant to Georgia, Army to Clemson. And I hope they do it this way. This is just the most logical thing I think they do. And then from there, you put your 2 worst teams in. Actually, Fairfield's pretty good, but they're stuck.
Yeah.
So it's Fairfield and North Dakota State. I think just geography-wise, you put Fairfield in Kentucky and then North Dakota State there in College Station. And there you go.
That was fun. So
amazing.
Just to summarize the work that we just did, in Lexington Regional, the number 1 overall seed Kentucky is hosting UConn, Cincinnati, and Fairfield. That's a pretty favorable regional for a 1 seed. I do agree. In the College Station Regional, number 2 overall seed Texas, we have a fun bowl game there. Texas A&M, Texas, the soon-to-be SEC in-state rivals there. Lamar, North Dakota State. Those 3 teams in Texas, very fun. Knoxville Regional, Tennessee hosting Oregon, Northeastern, and Austin Peay. Honestly, like the Tennessee-Austin Peay matchup is amazing.
Had to have it.
Yeah. The Chapel Hill Regional, they're hosting San Diego, St. John's, and Sacred Heart. That's a very favorable regional for the top ACC team. The 5th overall seed Arkansas in the Fayetteville Regional hosting Louisiana Tech, Illinois, in Little Rock. Again, you get the Arkansas Little Rock matchup in round 1, which would be fun. Athens Regional, Georgia's the 6th overall seed, hosting NC State, Troy, and Bryant. 7th overall seed, Clemson. The Clemson Regional would host Alabama, Charleston, and Army. If Clemson and Charleston would have faced, that's also very fun. In Tallahassee, Florida State, Florida A&M playing each other in game 1. Southern Miss and UCF as the 2 and 3 seeds there. That was the last national host as well. So 9th overall, we have Oklahoma in the Norman Regional. It's Oklahoma, Nebraska, Utah, and Fresno State. 10th overall is Wake Forest. So that regional is Dallas Baptist, Coastal Carolina, and High Point. That one's got some nice Carolina regionality for it too. Lots of very high-powered offense in that regional. 11, Starkville Regional, Mississippi State hosting Louisiana, Georgia Tech, and Wright State. 12th in Greenville, East Carolina hosting Duke, West Virginia, and Columbia. That's also, so I don't know, you didn't meet NC Nick, which is Colby's brother. He's a Duke. So you got you got
you guys are gonna all have to fly to that thing and hang out all weekend.
We have talked about going down to a Greenville regional. That would be very fun.
I have a promise that if they make it to Omaha, I'll go. They still haven't made it, but this is a wild story, but back when NCAA video games were popular years ago, and obviously they're coming back now. I did a long-term, like 10-year dynasty with East Carolina, and
that was my team, dynasty-wise.
Yes, sung the fight song, and purple and gold are good colors, so I'm all for it.
Exactly. Yeah, I love the pirate. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan as well. So I was like, this logo is extremely cool to me. So yeah, that was a natural fit. I made that dynasty in Greenville as well.
That's awesome.
One of the buddies that I would play against, he liked the cult atmosphere in College Station. So that was his. In Terre Haute, 13th overall, Indiana State hosts Oklahoma State, Vanderbilt, and St. Louis. 14th overall, Virginia in Charlottesville Regional hosting South Carolina, UNC Wilmington, and UNC Greensboro.
That's a strong regional.
Yes, it is.
Anybody could come out of that.
I really like, I think so too. And South Carolina they struggle to play on the road. And Virginia's shown some signs of weakness recently. In the Santa Barbara regional, UC Santa Barbara hosting Arizona, LSU, and Grand Canyon. That just seems like the dream regional for like the leftover SEC team to go in and wreck. You always get one of those each year. And LSU, if they do make it in the tournament, that would have meant they finished hot, and that totally makes sense and kind of reminds me of the year they were. It kind of reminds me of the year they were sent to Oregon State for sure. And the 16th overall seed, Oregon State, they host UC Irvine, Kansas State, and Bowling Green. So that was for all the audio listeners. Rocco, I appreciate you spending some time with me for sure on this show. It was a lot of fun. Any parting words on kind of the exercise and the last 2 weekends here of the regular season?
Well, yeah, thank you for allowing me to pop my baseball forecasting cherry. I mean, it was fantastic. I think just going through the process with another person, I try to pay attention to all the things that are out there, any other podcasts or anybody talking about it. There's always a couple surprises on Selection Monday. Certainly this year will probably be no different, because I think I identified at the beginning of the process 8 at least leagues that could flip upside down with a bid stealer. Some years there's been more than 8. So I'm really excited for the tournaments to start, and getting to do this, well ahead of time. It will help hopefully viewers know which ones to really be paying attention to. And then I think the committee is going to have a really tough time, because a lot of those 3 seeds that we talked about, they might be squeezing out some or almost all of them, depending on how many bids get stolen. So it'll be a lot of fun these next couple of weeks. And then after the bracket comes out, I'll be very excited to actually watch that weekend of regionals. Usually there's not enough upsets for my taste, so I get a little more disinterested by the World Series, but let's hope we can get like an East Carolina there, or a Sycamores, or a Gauchos.
last year was for sure fun. Oral Roberts made noise in
yeah.
Omaha last year. This year overall, it feels like a little bit of a weaker top
Yeah.
crop. So
Right.
if somebody else is able to get there this year, I think they
Need
could make noise once again.
need one of those Sun Belt teams to just go on a tear.
I agree.
And
And a lot of people
yeah,
want to put the puzzle pieces together on Gilmore going back and retire and going out on top in Omaha.
that'd be crazy.
So that would be a fun storyline to watch. But Rocco, go ahead and plug your work on Twitter. People can follow you, Rocco Miller 8, Twitter and X. But go ahead and plug bracketeer.org and your day job and what you do for a living.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, bracketeer.org is my website. If you're into college basketball, which if you're watching this, I'm sure you are. I do a lot of consulting through the off season with programs from all 32 Division One leagues in terms of putting schedules together for next year. I don't know how it became that because it started with COVID, where teams were just trying to find teams to play against, and I was tracking it all. And every once in a while, throughout that 2020 and 2021 madness of having games getting canceled and teams trying to find healthy teams to play, I met a lot of people behind the scenes that make games happen. And seeing a few of those come together at that point was really huge, and got me exposed to a lot of different leagues, programs, etc. So now I'm just tracking it all, and so you'll see me tweet a lot of different updates on tournaments coming together, games coming together, certainly in it to put the best possible games together for teams that will be awesome next year. So especially those non-power teams like your McNeese's or your, just teams that are going to be excellent next year. St. Louis being probably one of those as well. So keep your eyes peeled on that. My site, as the summer goes on, we'll have a page for each conference. Those aren't live yet, but stay tuned. And that will be an easy way, if you're probably not tracking it as close as I am, for you to know who your favorite team's going to be playing against. And it'll also be updated throughout the announcement cycles. So it's not just when the schedule's officially out. You can come to my site to get some clues or read about some rumors. So I try to keep everybody up to speed the best I can.
Thank you very much for joining me for
My
2+
pleasure.
hours at this point now. It was a ton of fun. And for anybody, I mean, he does an amazing job covering the game of college basketball. We look forward to, talking more in the future for sure. And thank you very much for joining us. This is the College Baseball Experience. Adios, amigos.